Federal government's pledge of 40 acres and a mule to the formerly enslaved has long been known as a broken promise. But a new investigative report reveals that not only did the government grant land to hundreds of formerly enslaved people, it also took that land back and returned it to white Southerners. That 2-year reporting project done by the Center for Public Integrity, Reveal, and Mother Jones is now the largest collection of land titles from the 40 Acres program ever to be analyzed and published. I spoke recently with Alexia Fernandez Campbell, a senior investigative reporter at the Center for Public Integrity. Alexia, welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be here.
So take me back to the fall of 2021. You were working on an entirely different project unrelated to this. You're digging through the digital archives at the Smithsonian, and you come across the name Fergus Wilson on an 1865 document. How does that change the course of your reporting?
I didn't immediately realize what I was looking at. I did some Googling. I'm like, this is the 40 Acres program. And I was thinking, but everything I knew about it was that it was a promise that was never kept. It's something that didn't happen. So to me, like that disconnect, we're like, oh, there are land titles. I don't think this is common knowledge.
So a lot of folks have heard this phrase, right? 40 acres and a mule. As you say, a lot of people thought, okay, this just never happened. And your reporting is called 40 Acres and a Lie. What's the truth behind this program? What do people not know?
What people don't know is that it wasn't just a promise that was broken. People were received land titles. We found more than 1,250 people who got land titles, men and women. They picked out their plots of land, mostly on the plantations where they were enslaved. Actually, not everyone got 40 acres, which is another misconception. It was up to 40 acres. And then people were living there. They were planting their crops. They were selling them in Savannah. Some of them formed governments. They elected a sheriff. They were living their lives, and they lived there for like up to a year and a half before they were kicked off.
They were kicked off. I want to stop you there so you can tell us a little bit more and also remind people what it took you to get to the point of finding those 1,200 people that you did. You and your reporting team, you reviewed thousands of records. You conducted hours of genealogical research. You even employed artificial intelligence to sort through the millions of documents online. You mentioned these families, and we're talking about a stretch of land in Georgia and South Carolina, we should point out. How did they get kicked off the land that the government gave them?
Basically, because Lincoln was assassinated. I mean, they had promised this land. They gave land titles. The government said, this is yours. You deserve it. You're going to keep it. But Congress needed to make those titles permanent. They had a majority in Congress who were willing to do it. But Andrew Johnson, he was the vice president. He was a white supremacist. He sided with the planters who wanted their land back, and he vetoed every effort to make those land titles permanent.
So how are those families removed? They were literally forcibly removed from the land?
Some of them revolted. Some of them were pressured to sign work contracts, basically to work for their former enslaver, and some just said no way, and they left.
I want to name some of the people you uncovered here because their names have otherwise been lost to history. Fergus Wilson is one, Jim Hutchinson is another, Pompey Jackson is a third. You managed to track down some of their descendants as well. Did they know about the land and the history you're sharing with us now?
A lot of them did not. And I even spoke with one descendant who has been researching her family diligently. She lived with her great-grandmother, who was Pompey's daughter, and even she thinks his daughter didn't know. So she was amazed to hear this history.
You did a little more research to talk about the value of the land. This is an important part of your reporting here. 1 4-acre lot that you identified in Jacksonville, Florida, based on a sale last year, that it would, today, 40 acres would be worth $2.5 million there. It's not just the land that was lost here in your reporting. Tell me about what else you found.
Yeah, well, just that generational wealth that wasn't passed on. You know, this 40 acres land was all the coast. It's like expensive coastal real estate. We found gated communities, golf courses, and restaurants, incredibly valuable lands. This is wealth that was not passed on, and that's kind of what we're trying to show is the impact. This is not a history lesson only. It's the impact on people who are alive today.
The people who live there now, the communities that are there now, is any of this history part of what they know? Are they aware of it?
No, absolutely not. It was very jarring for me to go to some places where there's no sign. Other than like the Habersham Plantation gated community, that's, I guess, that sign. But as far as the 40 acres that it was given to someone and taken back, there's zero signs.
Do you have any way of calculating the full loss of generational wealth here?
That was actually one of the hardest things to do. We wanted to, because there were like 75 plantations more where this land titles were handed out, but we couldn't find maps for all these old plantations to figure out exactly where they were. So we had to just use these examples. And the examples we found, some of them were like shocking, like like you said, millions of dollars for 40 acres today.
So when you speak to descendants of these families, what kind of reaction did you get? I mean, knowing about the generational wealth that was lost, about the historical injustice that transpired here, what are their reactions today?
People have had a lot of different reactions. I would say a very common one was cynicism, kind of like, yeah, of course the government took it away. Like, of course we would be given land and my ancestors would be given land and be taken away. That was just the beginning of like many hundreds of years of like injustices against the Black Americans. So a lot of people were not surprised. There were some people who were surprised to find out they were personally connected to that history, but no one was surprised that the land was taken back.
There is a sort of what now component to all this, right? Is there a way to correct a historical injustice like this?
Some people have been asking if there's any legal recourse. Everyone we spoke to, the experts said that because they weren't permanent titles, that they needed to be basically ratified by Congress, there's no legal recourse, but no one's ever like challenged a situation like this in court. However, there are people that we spoke to who think that, you know, there is a moral issue here. It's such like a glaring injustice, and there are people with names who got land titles and descendants. Like, it's not just some abstract idea, like people lost this wealth, and that maybe there's a moral claim for like reparations or something like that.
It's just a remarkable piece of reporting. I know a labor of love for you and your team, 2.5 years of work there. It's online now for anyone who wants to read the whole thing, 40 acres and a lot.
Yeah, you know, the biggest thing I try to do when it comes down to my faith and my belief in Christ is I try not to hate. That is God's biggest thing with man, is that we don't hate and we forgive. But when you hear white people who you know are not strong as Black people are, because do you know that for us to get where we are today, for us to even be able to live the way we live today, you know how much strength that took? That's why I always say this generation could not have gotten us to where we are today. It took a strong generations of Black people for us to exist today because of things that were done to us in the name of white hate. And all these white people that deny it, white people still to this day who are in the Klan deny that there's hate in this country. They're in the Klan. So I don't ever want to talk to weak people and have them tell me that's why I don't want to hear. That's why I don't get into these kind of debates and discussions with people. I'd rather discuss that with us and give us this understanding here. Let's move forward, because we know what's been done to us. Look at that. You know, it took one hateful man to be able to get into a governmental seat to reverse something that they knew in the bottom of their heart. They knew that they owed Black people this. This is just yet another shame of this country. And do I think that we deserve reparations? I don't know about the we. I know that if they can trace the lineage of those people who were given the 40 acres and a mule, and the lineage of the lineage of the lineage, then yeah, they need to do something about something. Because when you talk about generational wealth, it's like when I moved out to the suburbs, they owned acres and acres of land for their farms. Some of them had 100 to 500 head of cattle. And you can't do that without having acres and acres of land. And being white, when you can just pass your acres on to your kids and buy acres cheap and don't have people in the community rebelling because you're a certain color. When not life can go that easy for you, then there you are. But life was not that easy for Black people. And this right here is the living proof of just one of the thousands of things that have been done to Black people in this country. Yet we still prevail. We persist to exist. And that's the problem I have with our failures right now, the failures of our kids in education, the failures with the way we act with one another, how our communities have just fallen apart, no growth, no nothing. We got this plaza over there. Just think about that this morning, this plaza over there on the corner of Jefferson and William. No investment in it. And that's Black people. It's in a Black community, so it stands to reason it should be Black investment. But we don't self-invest. We don't do anything. People want to say, that's because we were slaves and they put that in our heads. Shut up. My father didn't feed us. Did I starve my kids? No. My father didn't feed us. I didn't starve my kids. So don't give me that it's passed on from generation to generation. Like I said, it just comes down to where you want to be. You set your own standard and you go after it. So blaming white people for all of our shortcomings and our ills, even if it is their fault, like the guns in our community, we know that they've been brought down here by some white guy who had a trunk load of guns. We know this, all right? But nobody told you you have to buy it. Nobody told you you had to take it. We can't blame society for our shortcomings. So we need to wake up. We really do. Too much has happened to our people in this country for us to be the failures that we are and the failures that our children are these days. Black people, please wake up. This is 40 Acres and a Lie, and it proves just yet another thing that's been done to us. Wake up.